I'd asked Cheryl to get married a couple of times seriously, and she wanted to get further along, closer to her degree.
She was his high school sweetheart, but their story was a labyrinth of complication, a romance that required Ron Howard to ask for her hand not once, but 3 separate times, before the one word he longed to hear finally came. Now, at 71, the legendary director is pulling back the curtain, revealing the truth that lay hidden for decades. The story of the secret talisman she became for his films, the astonishing truth behind how they named their children, and the quiet, profound reason he chose her over the blinding allure of Hollywood's brightest stars. Tonight, we uncover the untold romance that would become the very anchor of Ron Howard's life. Our story begins on the 1st of March, 1954, in the quiet, unassuming town of Duncan, Oklahoma. Here, Ronald William Howard was born, the first child of Rance and Jean Howard, 2 souls bound by an unyielding devotion to the craft of acting. His father, born Harold Beckenhold, had adopted the name Howard in 1948, a symbolic rebirth for a man who was an actor, a writer, and a director. His mother, an actress forged in the demanding world of New York City theater, brought her own artistic fire. Together, they would build a family where storytelling was the very air they breathed, where performance was woven into the fabric of daily life. At the moment of Ron's birth, his father was serving in the United States Air Force. Yet even under the weight of military duty, the artist within Rance refused to be silenced. His passion for the stage never waned. He had studied drama at the University of Oklahoma, determined to make it his life's work. His mother, Jean, carried that same artistic electricity from her New York training into the heart of their home. To grow up in this environment was to be immersed in a constant current of creation. From his earliest moments, Ron was surrounded by this world of imagination, a stark contrast to the town of Duncan, a place of fewer than 20,000 residents. Life there was simple, a universe away from the entertainment industry. But even as a toddler, there was a spark in Ron, a flicker of something extraordinary. His parents, with their trained eyes, recognized it almost immediately. They knew they had a duty to give this nascent talent the chance to flourish. That singular decision set in motion a life-altering journey, leaving Oklahoma behind for a new beginning in Hollywood. But even after moving to Los Angeles, the Howards lived with a quiet intention. There was no sprawling mansion, no embrace of empty luxury. They settled in Burbank, a place where they could focus on the work, free from the distractions of fame. And no matter how successful they became, they never lost sight of their core values. It was this mindset, this foundation, that would keep Ron grounded as the powerful currents of his career began to rise. Ron's first time on a stage came when he was just 18 months old. By the time he was 2, his image was already captured on celluloid, in his first film, Frontier Woman, in 1956. At only 4 years old, he was acting regularly, guided by his father's steady hand. There was no desperate rush for stardom. His parents wanted him to be prepared, to be a craftsman, to truly understand the art he was inheriting. That patient preparation would make all the difference. His moment, his big break, arrived at the age of 6. He was cast as Opie Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show in 1960. The show would run for 8 remarkable seasons, and it would turn the boy, then credited as Ronnie Howard, into a household name. His portrayal of the earnest and lovable Opie made him one of the most beloved child actors in the history of television. Yet his very first scene on that iconic set was a profound challenge. He was asked to imagine his toy turtle had passed away, and to summon a genuine, heartbreaking sadness. For any child actor, it was a monumental task. But Howard approached it with a startling focus. Director Bob Sweeney saw that spark, that something special, and taught him the art of concentration. He showed him how to make every scene feel real. That single piece of advice would shape Ron Howard's entire approach to his craft for all the years to come. Meanwhile, Andy Griffith himself became more than a co-star. He was a mentor, a second father, guiding the young boy through the complexities of acting and of life. He taught him about professionalism, the sacred rhythm of storytelling, and ensured he felt protected on set, a bond that would last long after the show ended in 1968. But their bond, forged under the studio lights, would endure for decades, and in 1971 their paths would cross once more. Howard made a guest appearance on the new Andy Griffith Show, a testament to their shared history. Griffith would often speak of the young man's profound talent, and Howard would forever credit the man who sculpted his formative years. Yet, even as the world saw him as Opie, a different ambition was stirring within him. He was ready to prove he was more than a television fixture. In 1962, he stepped onto the grand stage of The Music Man, embodying Winthrop Peru, a timid boy with a lisp who was destined to deliver. One of the film's most indelible musical moments, the movie became a sensation, capturing the nation's heart and ranking as the third highest-grossing film of the year. It garnered 6 Academy Award nominations, and just 1 year later, in 1963, he explored a more poignant role, playing Eddie Corbett in The Courtship of Eddie's Father. He portrayed a boy on a delicate mission to find a new wife for his widowed father. His performance was hailed for its remarkable emotional depth and its perfectly tuned comedic timing. The legendary director, Vincente Minnelli, was particularly captivated, noting that Howard possessed a rare, innate ability to convey the most genuine of human emotions. But Howard's gaze was already drifting beyond the performance. Even as a child, he was mesmerized by the art of filmmaking itself, a fascination kindled during his time on CBS's Playhouse 90. The show was a crucible of creativity, exposing him to the intricate machinery behind the television screen, a world populated by Hollywood's finest directors and writers. Young Howard was a silent observer, a student in the shadows, watching masters like Alex Siegel orchestrate complex productions with a conductor's grace. He was absorbing the alchemy of storytelling, learning how a narrative is truly brought to life. Then, in 1973, his career arrived at a defining crossroads, with a role as Steve Bolander in a film called American Graffiti. At the time, he was still a ghost of his own past, forever known as Opie Taylor from Mayberry. That role had given him fame, but it had also locked him in the gilded cage of a child star. American Graffiti, a film directed by a visionary named George Lucas, would be the key. The film was a memory, a snapshot of the last night of summer in 1962, following a tribe of teenagers as they cruised the neon-drenched streets. They were on the precipice of life, facing monumental decisions, their world set to the rhythm of the greatest rock and roll anthems of their time. For Lucas, it was a deeply personal story, drawn from the memories of his own adolescence in Modesto, California. And at the center of this world was Howard's character, Steve, a high school graduate standing at a fork in the road, caught between the familiar comfort of his girlfriend and the unknown promise of college. The film struck a universal chord, its heartbeat powered by over 40 classic songs from icons like Buddy Holly and Chuck Berry. Produced on a meager budget of under $1 million, it became a titan, earning over $140 million and securing 5 Academy Award nominations. But the film's resonance echoed far beyond the box office. Its tagline, "Where were you in '62?" became a profound question for an entire generation of baby boomers. It unearthed a buried past, sparking a cultural wave of nostalgia for the 1950s and early 60s. But for Howard, the effect was deeply personal. He had spent years as Opie, an identity Hollywood refused to let him outgrow. American Graffiti was his chance to prove he was more. It was a declaration that he could inhabit mature, complex roles. This was the breakthrough he desperately needed, the one that set the stage for the most defining role of his acting career. In the hushed offices of ABC, executives had taken notice. They saw his potential not just as an actor, but as a leading man, which led them to cast him as Richie Cunningham in a new show called Happy Days. In 1974, creator Gary Marshall presented a sun-bleached, nostalgic postcard of life in 1950s America. But the series had a difficult birth, struggling to find its footing in its first 2 seasons. Then, a single, pivotal change altered its destiny. The production shifted to a multi-camera format, filmed in front of a live studio audience. That single change injected the show with an electrifying, vital energy it had been missing. And by its third season, Happy Days had climbed to the very summit of television, becoming the #1 show in the country. Howard's Richie was the ultimate boy next door. Wholesome, responsible, and instantly relatable. His character became the moral compass of the series, the very heart of the show, as it navigated the timeless passage of teenage life. Amidst the on-screen tales of friendship and family, Happy Days charted a course for 11 seasons, with Howard a constant presence until 1980. But in the shadows, far from the laughter of the live studio audience, the narrative was far from perfect. Initially, the spotlight belonged unequivocally to Howard, a fact that was about to change with the arrival of Henry Winkler's unforgettable character. Arthur Fonzie Fonzarelli, a cultural phenomenon in the making, with his iconic leather jacket, a swagger that defined cool, and his signature, A. He became the undeniable heart of the show. By the third season, a telling change appeared in the opening titles, Winkler's name now standing shoulder to shoulder with Howard's. The network, sensing a seismic shift in popularity, even floated a new title, Fonzie's Happy Days. For Howard, this was more than a suggestion, it was a betrayal. He had joined the cast under the promise of being the central figure, and now felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. He drew a line in the sand, making it unequivocally clear that if the title changed, he would walk away. The network relented, preserving the original name, but the cultural conversation had already crowned its new king, the Fonz. And while a genuine friendship existed between Howard and Winkler, the professional strain was undeniable. Howard would later confess that it wasn't jealousy he felt for his co-star, but the profound, unsettling sense that Happy Days was no longer his story to tell. As Winkler's star ascended, the climate on set grew colder, a change Howard could not ignore. He observed the subtle shifts in the way studio executives addressed him. He was no longer the center of their universe. The press began to whisper, speculating, that Ron Howard had become a supporting player in his own production. But where some might see an ending, he saw an opportunity, a catalyst for a different kind of ambition. He channeled this quiet frustration into his true passion. The craft of directing, driven to prove his artistry, extended far beyond the frame. So, when he departed from Happy Days in 1980, he wasn't an actor adrift. He was a filmmaker with a vision, armed with the knowledge to bring that vision to life. The seeds of this vision had been planted long before in the sun-drenched suburbs of Burbank, California. It was there, as a high school student, that he first held a Super 8 camera, and with it, he began to weave his own short films. This was never a mere pastime, it was a serious, disciplined study of the art form. He even submitted his work to a Kodak-sponsored film competition for young creators, earning the second prize. It was a faint, early signal of an immense talent waiting to be unleashed. A talent for storytelling that was carefully nurtured by the most important figure in his life, his father, Rance Howard. Rance, a seasoned actor himself, knew the labyrinthine ways of the industry and saw in his son's fascination something more profound than a passing interest. Even then, while playing Opie on The Andy Griffith Show, his gaze was often fixed beyond the other actors, on the world unfolding behind the camera. He was a silent student, observing the directors with an intense focus. He absorbed everything, the choreography of the camera, the rhythm of rehearsals. One director, sensing this quiet intensity, looked at the young boy and made a startlingly accurate prediction. "You're going to be a filmmaker one day." Those words became a lodestar. By the time he walked across the graduation stage in 1972, the path ahead was already illuminated in his mind. His collection of Super 8 films had become his private film school, teaching him the essential language of framing, the delicate art of the edit, and the power of a visual narrative. While the world knew him as an actor, he was quietly forging a different identity. After high school, he took the decisive next step on his chosen path. He enrolled in the prestigious School of Cinematic Arts at the University of Southern California, a hallowed ground for aspiring filmmakers. It was a place of state-of-the-art equipment and deep-rooted industry connections. There, Ron became a member of the school's very first freshman film class, a landmark moment in his journey. Yet, destiny had another script in mind. Shortly after beginning his studies, he landed the role of Richie Cunningham on Happy Days. The show's success was meteoric, and the delicate balance between a demanding acting career and his formal education became untenable. A choice had to be made. He stepped away from USC, his degree unfinished, but his education was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Every set he walked onto became his new classroom. He transformed each acting role into a masterclass in filmmaking, studying directors, posing questions, and absorbing the intricate mechanics of a production. He was receiving a practical, immersive education that no university could ever replicate. Years later, in a moment of profound irony, he would return to the halls of USC, not as a student, but as an honored guest speaker. In passing his wisdom to a new generation of filmmakers, he would often reflect that while a formal education eluded him, the real lessons were learned in the trenches, forging the very foundation of his career. His true cinematic debut as a director arrived in 1977, not through a conventional door, but through a curious pact made with the legendary producer, Roger Corman. The proposition was simple, yet profound. If Ron would agree to star in Eat My Dust, Corman would grant him the director's chair for his own project. The script, however, did little to ignite his passion. Yet, with the foresight of a master strategist, he recognized the true prize. He accepted the role, and in doing so, unlocked the opportunity to helm his first feature, Grand Theft Auto. In a whirlwind of creative energy, Ron and his father penned the entire script in a mere 2 weeks, fueled by a shoestring budget of just $602,000. The production was a blur, shot in an astonishing 23 days, a high-octane action comedy centered on a young couple fleeing their past. It was a tapestry of relentless car chases and unforgettable characters. While critics remained split, audiences embraced it, propelling the film to a remarkable $15 million at the box office. An undeniable triumph against its humble budget, directing Grand Theft Auto became a crucible, a defining moment where Ron was forced to command unforgiving schedules. He navigated the treacherous waters of limited resources, all under the immense pressure to deliver pure entertainment. It would also mark the first, and last, time he would ever direct himself on screen. The success of Grand Theft Auto echoed through the Hollywood canyons, a declaration that Ron Howard was far more than the familiar face on television. And it would turn the boy, then credited as Ronnie Howard, into a household name. His portrayal of the earnest and lovable Opie, it was a comedy that would shatter expectations, proving he was more than just the wholesome persona of Richie Cunningham. While the world knew him from Happy Days, a quiet ambition burned within. He had already tested the waters with smaller projects, but he yearned for a larger canvas. Night Shift was the true proving ground. The film's cast featured his old friend Henry Winkler, Shelley Long, and a raw, undiscovered talent named Michael Keaton. For Keaton, it was a debut that would change everything. The story followed a timid morgue attendant whose quiet, nocturnal existence is about to be violently disrupted by a fast-talking, unpredictable new partner with an audacious plan to run a highly unconventional enterprise from the solemn halls of the city morgue. The premise was audacious, bordering on the absurd. Yet, Howard orchestrated a masterful symphony, balancing the film's wild comedy with surprising moments of genuine heart. The film became an unexpected phenomenon, earning over $21 million. Critics took note, praising Howard's confident and steady hand at the helm. But the true revelation was Michael Keaton. His performance was a force of nature, a live wire, crackling with an energy that was impossible to ignore. He didn't just share the screen, he seized it, earning the Kansas City Film Critics Circle Award for Best Supporting Actor. Decades later, the film's legacy endures, holding a remarkable 93% approval on Rotten Tomatoes, with many hailing it as one of the most incisive comedies of the early 80s. But not every voice in the chorus sang its praises. Janet Maslin of the New York Times harbored reservations. She felt the film's kinetic energy waned in its later acts, but even she could not deny its undeniable cultural impact. The project also forged a new chapter in Howard's creative partnership with Henry Winkler. After years of a familiar dynamic on Happy Days, this was a profound shift. Under Howard's direction, Winkler delivered one of the most memorable performances of his career. He revealed a depth far beyond comedy, just as Howard proved he could command a major motion picture with the confidence of a seasoned veteran. The film was spoken of in the same breath as other seminal comedies of the era, like Risky Business. More than anything, it was a glimpse into the filmmaker Ron Howard was destined to become, and he wasted no time. By 1984, he was directing Splash, a romantic fantasy that would become a cultural touchstone, starring a charismatic young actor named Tom Hanks. The story of a man who falls for a mermaid, brought to life by Daryl Hannah, was pure fantasy, but its magic was grounded in that signature Howard blend of irresistible humor and profound heart. The industry began to see the artist behind the actor, and in 1982, Ron Howard's ascent as a director truly began with a film called Night Shift. The film was more than a hit, it was a seismic shift for both Howard and Hanks, launching Hanks into stardom and marking the dawn of a new era for Disney. It was the first film released under the Touchstone Pictures banner, a label created for more mature stories, all launched with a modest $11 million budget. Against all expectations, Splash Times captured the public's imagination, earning nearly $70 million in the US and becoming the 10th highest-grossing film of the year. Critics celebrated Howard's deft ability to blend comedy with profound emotion, yet amidst the acclaim, the legendary Roger Ebert voiced a single, unusual complaint. He felt the leading role should have gone not to Hanks, but to the brilliant John Candy. Still, the film's triumph was absolute. It even secured an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Screenplay, proving that Ron Howard was not merely a one-hit wonder. He was a director who brought a vital new energy to Hollywood, and just 1 year later, he would prove it again. Howard pivoted dramatically with Time's Cocoon *, a 1985 science fiction drama that explored the story of elderly residents in a quiet retirement home who discover an otherworldly presence that grants them the impossible, a return to their youth. The film was a tapestry of humor and heart, woven with groundbreaking visual effects that would earn an Academy Award. The story itself was filmed against the sun-drenched backdrop of St. Petersburg, Florida. It was brought to life by a cast of veteran actors, including Don Ameche, who delivered a performance so moving it won him an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. Cocoon Times resonated deeply, earning over $85 million and becoming one of the biggest hits of the year. Then, in 1995, came Time's Apollo 13 *. This was the film that would cement Howard's mastery of turning real-life events into breathtaking drama, telling the story of NASA's fateful 1970 lunar mission. It was a mission where astronauts Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Haise faced a chilling life-or-death crisis in the cold, unforgiving vacuum of space. After a catastrophic oxygen tank explosion, the dream of walking on the moon dissolved into a desperate primal struggle. The singular mission to simply return home. Tom Hanks, Kevin Bacon, and Bill Paxton inhabited the roles of the stranded astronauts with profound conviction. While on the ground, Ed Harris and Gary Sinise portrayed the leaders of Mission Control, the earthbound minds fighting to guide them through the darkness. To achieve an unflinching realism, Howard worked in close collaboration with NASA, even filming scenes aboard the famed Vomit Comet, a specialized aircraft that simulates brief, terrifying moments of weightlessness. That dedication to detail paid off, as the movie grossed over $355 million worldwide. Forged from a $52 million budget, it received 9 Academy Award nominations, winning for its masterful film editing and immersive sound. But in a move that still puzzles many, the Academy left Howard out of the Best Director category. Over time, however, Apollo 13 times became an undisputed classic. The iconic line, "Houston, we have a problem," has since been woven into the fabric of our culture. In 2023, the film was added to the National Film Registry, recognized for its enduring cultural and historical importance. And just a few years later, Howard would tackle another profound true story with Time's A Beautiful Mind *. Released on December 21, 2001, the film illuminated the life of John Nash. He was a mathematical genius of breathtaking intellect, whose life was forever altered by a battle with schizophrenia. Russell Crowe portrayed Nash, bringing to life his brilliance, his consuming paranoia, and his eventual, hard-won triumph. Howard used inventive cinematic techniques to plunge viewers directly into the labyrinth of Nash's mind. He revealed crucial truths only as the character himself came to recognize them. The film's emotional core was the unwavering love of his wife, Alicia. Played by Jennifer Connelly in a performance that earned her an Oscar, she was his anchor. The film itself would go on to win 4 Academy Awards, including the coveted prizes for Best Picture and, at long last, Best Director for Howard. It earned over $313 million worldwide on a $58 million budget. But it was more than a box office triumph. The film fundamentally shifted the cultural conversation around mental illness. It offered audiences a profound glimpse into the labyrinth of schizophrenia, while honoring the brilliance and resilience of John Nash. Yet, Howard's canvas was never limited to serious drama. In the year 2000, he ventured from the halls of academia into the whimsical, snow-dusted world of Dr. Seuss with How the Grinch Stole Christmas. To translate that cherished book into a live-action spectacle was a Herculean task, but with the chaotic genius of Jim Carrey as the Grinch, the film was destined to become a holiday phenomenon. Carrey's daily metamorphosis into the iconic green curmudgeon was an ordeal, requiring hours of painstaking makeup application. It was a process he would later describe as feeling like being buried alive, a testament to the sheer physical demand of the production. Sensing the strain, Howard famously tried to lift spirits by dressing in the full Grinch costume himself one day on set. The film was finally unleashed on November 17, 2000. It immediately conquered the box office, becoming the highest-grossing holiday film of its time, pulling in $345 million worldwide. On a budget of $123 million, its artistry was recognized with an Academy Award for Best Makeup, and it earned nominations for both costume design and production design. And while some critics found its darker, more sardonic humor a strange fit for a children's story, the public wholeheartedly embraced it. Over the years, it has become an essential Christmas classic, defined by Carrey's utterly singular performance, a role that remains one of his most unforgettable. Then, in 2006, Howard pivoted again, trading holiday fantasy for historical conspiracy, directing The Da Vinci Code, based on Dan Brown's global bestseller. The film starred Tom Hanks as the brilliant symbologist Robert Langdon, drawn into a clandestine mystery stretching back centuries, a secret tied to the Holy Grail itself, and a shadowy religious order guarding a truth that threatened to shatter the foundations of faith. The film's release was met with a storm of immediate controversy. The Vatican itself condemned it. Religious groups organized calls for boycotts, and furious debates ignited over its portrayal of Christianity. But in Hollywood, such fire often fuels the box office. The Da Vinci Code premiered at the Cannes Film Festival on May 17, 2006, and became a cultural juggernaut, Howard's highest-grossing film, earning a staggering $760 million worldwide. From a $125 million budget, it launched a franchise. He would follow it with 2 sequels, Angels and Demons in 2009 and Inferno in 2016. And while scholars and critics endlessly debated the film's historical liberties, audiences were mesmerized by its potent blend of mystery, history, and breathless action. Behind the scenes, the production had its own legends. While filming in the sacred halls of the Louvre, Tom Hanks reportedly had a quick pants change in front of the Mona Lisa. It's a story that still brings a laugh from Howard today. Ron Howard has crafted cinematic legends, but not every touch from the master turns to gold. 2 of his most notable box office stumbles were Inferno in 2016 and Solo, a Star Wars story, in 2018. Both were born of cinematic royalty, with immense budgets, sky-high expectations, and deep roots in wildly successful franchises. Yet, both struggled to connect with audiences. Inferno was the 3rd film to feature Tom Hanks as Robert Langdon, a character whose first outing, The Da Vinci Code, had been a massive global event in 2006. It had earned $760 million worldwide. The sequel, Angels and Demons, followed in 2009, still pulling in a formidable $485 million. But by the time Inferno arrived, it seemed the audience's passion had cooled. It grossed just $220 million against its $75 million budget, The film was more than a hit. It was a seismic shift for both Howard and Hanks, launching Hanks into stardom and marking the dawn of a new era for Disney. The truth was, many viewers had simply lost interest in the puzzle. Compared to the lightning in a bottle of the earlier films, Inferno felt like an echo. Then came Solo, a Star Wars story, a film shrouded in whispers of trouble long before it ever reached the silver screen. The production had begun under the guidance of directors Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, but in a move that sent shockwaves through the industry, they were fired deep into filming. Ron Howard was brought aboard as a steady hand to right a listing ship, tasked with reshooting enormous sections of the movie under an unforgiving, ticking clock. The final cut flickered across critics' screens, earning nods of approval, but the box office told a different, darker story. It would gross a mere $393 million worldwide, a figure that branded it as the first Star Wars movie to ever lose money. A perfect storm of circumstances had conspired against its success. The Last Jedi had only just left theaters, a mere 5 months prior, stoking the embers of franchise fatigue. The fan base itself was fractured, its reactions to recent installments deeply divided, and many questioned whether Alden Ehrenreich could ever truly inhabit the iconic silhouette of Harrison Ford's Han Solo. Even with a bedrock of solid storytelling and action, the film failed to capture the imagination of the public. Yet, in the face of this monumental disappointment, Howard remained a study in quiet professionalism. He spoke only of his pride in the work, refusing to cast a single stone of blame. But Ron Howard's life is a narrative far grander than any Hollywood success story. It is a chronicle of love, of unwavering dedication, and of family values that have endured for decades. His true journey began not on a soundstage, but in the sun-drenched suburbs of Burbank, California, where he met Cheryl Alley, the woman who would become the anchor of his life. They were high school sweethearts, walking the halls of John Burroughs High. Their story began on a single fateful night, November 1st, 1970. They watched a re-release of It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, a chaotic comedy on screen, and then found a quiet corner for pizza. It was a simple, unassuming evening, yet it marked the genesis of something eternal. For Ron, a quiet certainty took hold. Cheryl was the one. He would ask for her hand in marriage 3 separate times before she would finally say yes. She had her own path to walk first, a commitment to her education that led to a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, and later, a Master of Fine Arts in Screenwriting. Only when her own chapter was written were they ready to begin theirs together. On June 7, 1975, they were married. Their wedding was a small but profound affair, witnessed by close friends and family, including the familiar faces of Andy Griffith and Tom Bosley. From that moment on, Cheryl was never just his wife. She was his partner. In everything. A quiet tradition was born from their union. Ron made it a point to include Cheryl in every single one of his films. Even if it was the briefest of cameos, a flicker on the screen, he believed she was his good luck charm. Cheryl, however, it was always more than a muse. She was a force in her own right, building a career as a writer and publishing the novel In the Face of Gin. Through every towering success and every daunting challenge of Ron's career, she was the constant presence by his side. When asked about the secret to their long, lasting marriage, Ron's answer was always deceptively simple. It was built, he said, on open communication and mutual respect. To him, there was no magic formula, just a shared, unspoken willingness to grow together through the seasons of life. In time, their life together expanded as they became parents. They had 4 children, Bryce Dallas Howard, born in 1981, twins Paige and Jocelyn Carlisle Howard, who arrived in 1985, and their youngest, Reed Cross Howard, born in 1987. Each child would follow a different star. Bryce, of course, would become the most famous, starring in modern epics like Jurassic World and The Help. Paige also heard the call of acting and writing, while Jocelyn chose a private life, far from the Hollywood glare. Reed followed a completely different passion, becoming a professional golfer and a distinct personality on social media. Despite the gravity of the Hollywood spotlight, Ron and Cheryl were determined to give their children the one thing fame could not buy: a normal life. they discouraged them from the pressures of acting at a young age, focusing instead on a stable, grounded upbringing. They often took their children along to distant film locations, homeschooling them when the journey demanded it. When Cheryl was pregnant with Reed, they moved the entire family to London, so that Ron could be present for both the filming of Willow and the birth of their son. It was a quiet testament to their deepest conviction. Family would always come first. Even the way they named their children seemed to reflect this unique blend of creativity and sentiment. Each middle name was a hidden map, a secret whisper of the place where each of their lives began. Bryce Dallas was named for the city in Texas, Paige and Jocelyn for the Carlisle Hotel in New York. Their children's names were pulled from the very fabric of their lives. The Carlisle Hotel in Manhattan, Reed Cross, a street near their home. But beneath these sentimental markers lay a constant, quiet struggle, balancing the relentless demands of Hollywood with the sanctity of family. Yet, through it all, Ron and Cheryl found their rhythm. He would later confess that Cheryl was the true architect of their family life, the steady hand navigating the complex currents that kept their world intact. Early in his ascent, a piece of wisdom was offered by a seasoned veteran, the actor and director Alan Alda, who imparted a simple yet profound directive to approach family with the same meticulous care, the same unwavering focus that one would give to crafting a screenplay. Ron took that advice to heart, a guiding principle he clung to even as he launched the ambitious venture, Imagine Entertainment. He was determined to remain a constant presence, a father whose children would never feel like strangers looking in from the outside. They rejected the very idea of separating work from home. Instead, they wove the two worlds together, creating a unique tapestry of life. The threads weren't always perfectly aligned, but for them, it was a masterpiece held together by simple, sacred rituals. Quiet coffee dates, unhurried bike rides, these were the anchors in the storm of a Hollywood life, the small acts that fortified their bond. It was an approach their children would later credit for their own sense of grounding, a foundation of stability built in the shadow of a colossal, demanding career. And it was from this foundation that Ron would build an empire that would reshape the landscape of modern cinema. In the autumn of 1985, a new vision for filmmaking began to take shape. Alongside producer Brian Grazer, Ron Howard co-founded a company that would live up to its very name, Imagine Entertainment. With Grazer, the company would grow from a fledgling idea into a titan of Hollywood, a creative powerhouse that would release over 50 feature films and a slate of television series that would define a generation. From the sharp satire of Time's Arrested Development * to the heartland drama of Time's Friday Night Lights * and the operatic power of Time's Empire *, the reach of Imagine Entertainment was undeniable. And as the very medium of storytelling evolved, so did Imagine, expanding its domain into the new frontier of streaming, crafting original content for Netflix, Disney+, and Apple TV+. The company's journey through the financial world was a story in itself, a public offering in 1986, followed by a strategic return to private ownership after a buyout in 1992. Over the years, its cinematic creations would amass billions worldwide. And then came Time's A Beautiful Mind *, a triumph that would earn 4 Academy Awards, including the coveted Best Picture in 2002. The honor roll of their filmography reads like a testament to their range. The breathtaking tension of Times, Apollo 13 times in 1995, The Global Mystery of Times, The Da Vinci Code Times in 2006, and The Political Crucible of Times, Frost, Nixon Times in 2008. Each film was a declaration of Ron's mastery over disparate genres. But his influence wasn't confined to the silver screen. His impact on television was equally profound, as Imagine's projects set new standards for the medium. They garnered torrents of critical acclaim and a cascade of awards, cementing a truth. Ron Howard was not merely a film director. He was a master weaver of stories, no matter the canvas. Throughout his storied career, the industry's highest honors would find their way into Ron Howard's hands, a reflection of a life dedicated to his craft. He would hold 2 Academy Awards for Time's A Beautiful Mind *, with nominations for the masterful Time's Apollo 13 times and Time's Frost, Nixon *. His shelves would also hold 6 Emmy Awards, 2 Golden Globes, and a Grammy for his documentary on the Beatles, * 8 Days a Week *. And the box office told its own story, his films collectively earning more than $2 billion. Worldwide, in recognition of his indelible mark, his name was literally set in stone on the Hollywood Walk of Fame not once, but twice. The first star, for television, laid in 1981. The second, for film, placed decades later, in 2015. Meanwhile, his creation, Imagine Entertainment, became a vessel for projects that would command the industry's attention. These projects would amass an astonishing 47 Academy Award nominations and 217 Emmy nominations. Then, in 2003, came an honor that transcended Hollywood, the National Medal of Arts. It was the ultimate affirmation, solidifying his place not just as a filmmaker, but as an American master, one of the most revered architects of modern cinema.